back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Silver Turk, written by Mark Platt. This is the first full story which features Julie Cox as Mary Shelley, who was introduced as a companion in the Company of Friends anthology episode Mary Story. If you want to see my video on that, I've made a video on that if you want to watch it. This story features, of course, the Cybermen. Now, Mark Platt made himself well known in terms of the audio dramas for writing the story Spare Parts with the Fifth Doctor, which we've also tackled on the marathon. And people lost their shit when it came to that story. People all over the fandom absolutely love that one. If you want to know my opinions, you can go watch that video. So it was no small step that Big Finish would have given them another Cyberman story, this time featuring their main Doctor, Paul McGann. Now, this story also introduces a brand new theme song, which would be used for the Mary Shelley trilogy, in which we get 3 full stories with Mary. This theme song, I believe the guy who did it is called Jamie Robinson or something like that. This theme song is bloody amazing. It starts off with the Sting from the 2005, and then it becomes like this sort of guitar riffing, like blues kind of like rock. And then I love the Sting at the end of the theme song. It was dun dun dun, leading into our story. Fan-bloody-tastic. So, the story itself, I haven't heard much people talk about this one. When I went into this story, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted. And though it didn't give me what I wanted, I still enjoyed it very well. I'm also happy to state that something which I really wanted from all the Mary Shelley stories, not seeing her as a companion, is that we tackle more gothic storylines. And I'm glad to say this is a very gothic style storyline. So, what do I mean by the story which I was looking for but I didn't quite get? Well, when I heard this premise, of which there is a single Cyberman acting as the Turk, for those of you who don't know, in real life now, back in, I believe they said in the 1800s, there was a automaton, shall we say, which was called a Turk, which was built up to be this robot which can play chess, and I don't know if it could play the piano, but it could do all sorts of things. But in real life, it turned out that this was actually a con. It was actually a man in a metal suit or something like that, and it wasn't really self-sustaining. So this story is basically a riff on that. And going into that, I thought we were going to get a lot of more scenes of Mary and the Cyberman basically getting to know each other and basically becoming friends as the Doctor tries to defeat the Cybermen. We do get that, but it's not the main focus of the story. I was thinking something a bit more like Dalek, where the villain is like the vocal point of the story. But here it is more like a generic plot, not in a bad way, but generic in terms of what I had in mind for it. So anyway, let's actually start. So here's the official Big Finish CD cover. Sorry about the glare there. Very nice artwork. This is also the first time Mary herself has actually appeared on the cover. And as you can see, it also appears to be a 10th Planet Cyberman on the cover. There's Paul McGann there, looking very handsome. And like always with these Big Finish CD covers, I make my own DVD covers. Did I make this one myself? No, I didn't. But I did put the right symbol because the TV movie DVD that I own is the older version. They released a newer version, a special edition with a different logo, image of him. So most of these DVDs that you find on the internet don't have the original DVD's logo. So this one's got the I've edited them in all of them. So here's the spine if anyone is interested. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And here's the back, which gives it away that I personally did not make this myself. So there you go, onto the story. So, the story starts off introducing us to a bunch of characters. The Doctor and Shelley don't actually turn up until halfway into episode 1. This is 4 parts, if I've forgotten to mention. And we get introduced to this woman who's singing a lullaby to her baby. And for some reason, there's something eerie about that lullaby. It's the rock-a-bye baby on you know, that famous lullaby, which I don't know if the lyrics are like the original and it's just because it's time set and it just sounds so strange, or whether there is new lyrics to make it more atmospheric. But it really sets the tone when the song is talking about gouging people's eyes out and ripping their intestines or stuff like that, which is really just bloody disturbing. This is also cut with this man who has lost all of his money due to going against this guy's machine, which he calls the Silver Turk, which obviously turns out to be a Cyberman, which the reveal that it's a Cyberman is actually the cliffhanger for part 1, or the revelation that it's a Cyberman, which is really weak, especially when you've got the Cyberman on the cover there and kind of got the idea of it, but it's still a nice little sting, I guess, for the plot. And this person, he's lost all of his money because he basically made a bet that he could beat the Silver Turk in a game of checkers or chess. I can't remember which one. And because he lost all of his money, he actually gets chased up by this other man who states that he wants to basically get his revenge. But first, I need you for something. And he seems to be getting attacked by this very animalistic style Cyberman, or at least at the moment. His voice is really distorted and creeped out, and yes, the voices are meant to resemble those used in the 10th Planet, which has that weird monochrome but also like sing-song like voices, and you can't go like this all the time, I am a Cyberman, those kind of voices. And that's mainly the focus of the story, is the conspiracy between the guy who owns the Silver Turk, the Cyberman, and this other fellow who talks to people the other person has been working on, as well as seemingly applying more and more murders as bodies turn up without any eyes, which is really disturbing. So like I said, halfway into the episode, the Doctor and Shelley finally appear. The Doctor has taken Shelley to Vienna, in which he states it's the exact same day that they left. He basically introduces her to the idea of time travel, where they go to a restaurant to where the Doctor plans to meet up with his companions Gemma and Samlot, I can't remember. As I stated in my Company of Friends Mary Story episode, this is actually a reference to the 8th Doctor story Terra Firma, in which him and Charlie discover he had suffered a memory loss of and he's completely lost all memory of two of his companions, and this is tied within that era. We never actually see these companions. In fact, it turns out that the TARDIS has mislanded, and it's actually taken them into a decade into the future. I think it's a decade, or at least like 100 years or something. I can't remember. I just can't remember. Sorry. I think like Mary's supposed to be like 18 when she was in Vala Diodati, and now she says she's like 72. So that should be a good representation of where the age gap is. And throughout the story, Shelley keeps bringing up her husband Percy, and is like, oh, he would like this. Oh, he would love this. Oh, Percy used to say this. Percy used to say that. Percy loved experimenting with learning about science in between his poetry writing. And Doctor kind of gets the sense that Mary isn't really enjoying herself. Like, she's enjoying the Doctor's company and she's glad and she's going on these adventures, but she is kind of getting homesick. Now, when we come to Shelley, one of the things that Doctor Who never really does for a specific reason is to have a historical character as a companion. The reason for this is because we know Shelley's going to live. She's got to go and write Frankenstein. And as well, this also means that it'll be hard for new writers because they have to do their research on who Mary Shelley was and her background and her fiction so that they can take influence. As you would probably have guessed, the Silver Turk is one of the many Doctor Who examples of Mary getting inspired to write Frankenstein. It also would be a disservice if I didn't mention that in the 13th Doctor episode, The Haunting of Vala Diodati, Mary again meets a lone Cyberman. But is this story about one Cyberman? As the Doctor discovers that there's this creature that's been going around attacking people. One of them actually survived, and after being bankrupt and making a scene during one of the Silver Turk's expeditions, mentions that he got attacked by a creature not too dissimilar, only it had legs and body limbs like poking out in different parts of its body, a freak of nature. And the Doctor kind of suspects this is the Silver Turk, so he actually goes to investigate. He interrupts this character feeding his Cyberman, and the Doctor then makes a kind of like a splitting scene just to come up and to see everything that's going on. I believe they say he's wearing a mask, so they don't actually see the Cyberman head. I don't know. I don't think, because they mention it's wearing some sort of bavocata, but the classic Cybermen already look like they're wearing ones anyway. So I until the revelation at the end that it's a Cyberman, I just presumed that the bavocata they're talking about is the actual Cyberman face from the 10th Planet. It's really confusing like that. And then there's this whole conspiracy about this woman whose husband had disappeared. This is the same woman who was singing to her baby earlier on. And there's a lot to catch up onto this story. Essentially, at one point, the Doctor gets on stage and tries to confront this person about his Cyberman, saying that he couldn't have created it, even though this guy claims he does. It's like, you need to tell me where you found him. This is the wrong time for him. Cybermen do enter Earth, but that's not until 1986. This is way too early. There shouldn't be any Cybermen at the moment. believe, if I remember correctly, the Doctor suspects time travel, but it turns out that there is no actual time traveling element in this story, leaving only the Cybermen to be the sci-fi element of the story. Now, what I find makes this story really interesting is that, for the most part, the Cybermen aren't even the villains. They are basically just pawns for these other characters to take advantage of. We have this one character who is who's using it to become the Silver Turk, and in a way, we do learn that the Cyberman is altering his brain or his mind so that he adopts Cybermen philosophy or something strange like that. I didn't quite understand it myself, but this character who runs the expedition is a really fascinating character, in my opinion. He starts off really nervous and tetchy, clearly not like a good showman until the Silver Turk comes out, and he's a bit more poignant. But slowly throughout the story, he starts just absolutely losing it. To the scene which we'll get on to later in the story. The other villain of the story is the guy who's been with the other Cyberman, who believes that he was the creator of both the Cybermen and that this other guy stole his property and he wants his Cyberman back for reasons. They seem to be making some sort of devices for him. It would be a great dishonour if I didn't mention that this villain is played by the same guy who played the villain in The Mask of Mandragora, a fantastic, or at least in my opinion, Fourth Doctor story. And that booming voice is very powerful. It reminds me a bit of David Banks. And he has a kind of showman personality to him. Like, I always just imagine him doing this every time he introduces himself, kind of. Like, every time he introduces himself, it's very bombastic. He's a very bombastic character. And at the start, it seems like the Doctor and Shelley aren't too sure about him until some people actually try to capture Shelley and succeed, whilst the Doctor has to go on a rescue mission. And it's here where the Doctor has to debate on taking Shelley back, because he basically is like, right, I've kind of messed up. I've taken Shelley before she wrote Frankenstein. If she dies here and doesn't write Frankenstein, then I've messed up time in a very, very big way. Pretty dumb plan on the Doctor's part, will have to admit. But that kind of never going to get resolved. Or at least not in this story. I don't know if it plays part in any other story. I guess it's kind of like a criticism to the story. They do kind of like bring up this like, right, she's a historical figure. We should be at least more careful with her well-being. And then, like, later on, she's just the companion role. There's a great scene right at the start where the Doctor's talking about, like, the rules of a companion. It's like, remember, if you need help, just shout out Doctor. But don't overuse it, because it can get really tiresome. Paul McGann and Julie Cox, they do a fantastic job and they really bounce off each other. But I don't think this story does Shelley, for the most part, a service. There are some really great scenes with her. We get a scene in which, when she's captured, she meets the other Cyberman. This Cyberman believes he's the last Cyberman. In fact, he believes he's on Mondas, and that the people he's supposed to be protecting have come out and just tortured him for seemingly no reason, and all of his communications have gone haywire. till Mary accidentally mentions that there is another Cyberman out there, and this other Cyberman freaks out and goes berserk, and that's a really powerful scene. It's what I was hoping the story would be more of. Not to say that the fact that it's not this entire scene isn't a bad thing, but I wish there was more scenes like that on a personal level. Well, but when we come with Shelley's interactions with the rest of the rest of the side characters, her relationship with the mother character and the guy who owns the Silver Turk, it kind of falls kind of bland in my opinion, and it really does weaken the story for me. Her interactions with the others characters seem like, maybe it's because the languages that are spoken in this story are so similar to what Mary was speaking during her time, that for her second adventure, her first full adventure, travelling in time, it does kind of, you do get the feeling, right, nothing has really changed. It doesn't feel like it's never, Mary never's oh my god, what's this? This is some sort of future technology or future something, and everybody else is where have you been all these years? So yeah, that's kind of strange, but for the most part, it's about these two Cybermen trying to interact with each other. It's revealed that the villain who is taking people was actually creating lifelike dummies so he can use in his shows, but he needs human eyes and is turning the Cyberman that he owns basically onto the streets to kill people and take their eyes so that they can make his puppets more realistic. Now the Doctor explains that this guy is also in this Cyberman philosophy influence thing, but it didn't work too well, and instead of wanting to see every human be the same, he just wants robots or these mannequins, as he calls them. Basically they are the life forms that he wants. He's basically gone mad as well. I find it's a really cool idea, and the imagery you get of the clunking of the wood and the wires on the inside of these creatures coming out, and to hear the voices of other characters, but in this really weird way, talking like this, in a very creepy, it's very creepy, it's very gothic, and it was the kind of stuff I wanted from a Mary Shelley era as a companion. I really like this kind of storyline, but however, I'm not keen on the idea that the Cybermen have been slowly mentally controlling these two main villains. It feels like the writer Mark Platt couldn't think of a better reason on why these people would look at the Cybermen and go, right, let's use these and put them in an exposition. So actually there is no really reason. We didn't need a reason. That could have been a great reason. It's just these people are really corrupt and took advantage of these Cybermen, and it makes for great drama as Shelley is basically torn as she sees the Cybermen and she pities them. One of them even states that they can feel pain after she explains what pain is, and it's horrified to learn that Cybermen don't even know what pain is, what the meaning of pain is. So she kind of really feels pity with them. But again, I don't like the idea of the mind control. It simplifies the villains to, oh, it wasn't their fault. They were just mind controlled. If they weren't mind controlled, they would have been really cool dudes. which kind of takes the threat out of them in a way. And the final act, this video is getting a little bit long, so to sum up, the final act, there's a really great scene in which the two Cybermen interact, but one of them is too low power to survive, and there seems to be it seems really somber, but at the same time, it's also most kind of creepy, because like the music's all swelling, it's all sad, and the poor damaged Cyberman, the Turk, his voice is distorted and it's repeat, you know, that kind of like it's like breaking down. Whilst the other Cyberman, whilst they talk, and basically they both agree that because the other one's dying, just take off its arms and brain parts and just connect it to the one that's alive, and so he'll be more sufficient in their plan. It turns out that these Cybermen were on a mission to try and find their twin planet and see if it's got the energy source needed to dispellipate. However, their ship got distracted or damaged during the liftoff, and without even knowing it, they actually landed on Earth. Strange story, I know, but it does actually kind of work in the premise of these two celestial beings who are lost and they're not even on their home anymore, despite them originally believing that they are. And it brings this really eerie end to it, where the Cyberman basically controls the army of mannequins to take down the Doctor, to get the Doctor, because actually, I forgot to mention, the Cybermen and Shelley actually do team up at one point. Shelley is just distorted by the fact that there is so much like misery and stuff with the surrounding the Doctor, and she even states like, right, after this adventure, I want you to take me home. In fact, they have a massive quarrel at one point, and she actually runs off to the Cyberman, feeling pity for him. It's like, I shouldn't be here, I shouldn't belong here, I'm missing my husband. Maybe we can team up and we can find our own way back. We're both people who are lost in a strange world where we don't belong. And near the end of the story, Shelley does shows why she is a great companion. Her dilemma here of her missing her original life, and kind of feels like maybe the adventure isn't for her. She's kind of like deciding, and she's kind of sick of the fact that the Doctor doesn't have any pity for the Cyberman, that they are monsters. He explains their origin, and Shelley's like, they're not monsters, are they? They are people who got so scared of being ill and dying that they turned themselves into these unholy beings. And the Cyberman and Shelley do team up, and the Cyberman is like, okay, you come with me, but we need the Doctor's help, because he has superior technology which can bring us back to our full strength. Before she works out that the Cyberman is going to betray her, and they're in like a rush and stuff, so they kind of try and take them down. All the while, during all this, the two main villains have this kind of interaction where, because the guy who owns the Silver Turk, who used to own the Silver Turk at this point, he's basically lost all sense of sanity, and he's under the impression that the Empress herself, I believe it's Siri at this point in history, wants to see the Silver Turk, and there's a really disturbing scene, really gothic, and I absolutely love it, where clearly by the sound effect, it's clear that this is one of the puppets, one of the creepy doll people, wooden doll things that the other one has created. But this other one, the guy who used to own the Silver Turk, has basically gone so mad that he believes that she is, and he does everything that she says. Until like somebody points out, I believe it was Shelley, points out that it's one of the dolls, and then the Empress's doll like injures her hand. We also get a scene in which Shelley talks to the doctor, and at the first she's like, "Why do you keep repeating the same question?" And then the doctor's voice becomes kind of like this, and it clicks that it's one of the automaton Magifigure's wooden creatures. And so the doctor basically tries to reason with the Cyberman, and basically realizes that he's going to die anyway, as the two different Cybermen have now joined into a similar brain, but because of their relationship and their dilemmas and how they're treated, and how the Silver Turk Cyberman was so damaged that his logic circuits have completely deteriorated, so he's basically a Cyberman gone mad, with no sense of logic, that the Cyberman basically destroys itself as all the mannequins being controlled by the Cyberman collapse and get destroyed. And so the Doctor burns the rest of the Cybermen, tells Shelley that he plans to take her back, but she's got back into the idea of adventures, and she asks the Doctor to take her to see the stars. Now, before I wrap up, there's actually a post-credit scene in which the guy who used to own the Silver Turk and the woman with the baby who had a romantic subplot in the adventure have teamed up to introduce a new showman event in which we hear Paul McGann's voice as the Silver Doctor. Yes, they've taken one of the mannequins, they've brought it back, and the Doctor is now, well, at least the appearance of the Doctor is now being part of this masquerade. Really creepy cliffhanger. From what I can gather, this cliffhanger has not been resolved. Whether they're going to leave it like that, I don't know. This has been going out since 2011, so I doubt we're going to get a conclusion to this. It's been 10 years. So there you go, that's the Silver Turk. Overall, I like most of it. I love the gothic aesthetic. I love Shelley's interaction with the Cybermen, as you would probably guess, because, you know, Frankenstein, duh. I love the Doctor's little subplot. I love the scene of Shelley in the imprisonment with the Cyberman who thinks he's alone. But I don't think it's completely there. I think the start of it, Shelley needs a lot of time to build up, as the world that she's interacting is very similar to her own, and she doesn't get really much interesting things to say during that point. There's a lot of build-up, there's a lot of plot in this adventure that does kind of bum down the plot, its characters in a way. And there's a lot of characters, some more memorable than others. Really the main two villains are the show stealers here, but the rest of the supporting cast, I feel, didn't get a lot interesting to do or say, and because of that, I don't think it's as good as most Mark Platt stories, but it's still a fantastic listen, and I still highly recommend it. And it's great. It's got the Gothic aesthetic that I really wanted, similar to Tom Baker's second full season. And yeah, that's not really much to say. So there you go, that's the Silver Turk. So join me next time when the Doctor and Shelley go to the past as they get burned for being witches. So join me next time for The Witch from the Well. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!